Hey everybody, welcome to the vocabulary lesson. Now, this is the vocabulary lesson 65. We're on the vocabulary lesson 65. And now, I'm going to tell you what the new words are. So, which is impair, impairment, impaired judgment, and impaired reflexes. And over here, over the counter. So, I'm going to tell you what the new words are here. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Okay, so impair is weaken or damage something, especially a human faculty or function. Drug use that impairs job performance to make or cause to become worse. Diminish in ability, value, excellence, etc., weaken or damage. To impair one's health, to impair negotiations, verb, used without object. To grow or become worse, lesson. Archaic, impairment, to diminish in function, ability, or quality, to weaken or make worse. It has been known for nearly 100 years that memory is impaired by bilateral damage to either of two brain regions. Smoking can impair your health. Drinking impairs a person's ability to think clearly. Sober drivers, sober, sober drivers are killed by impaired drivers, especially late at night. One study found that a sober driver's chance of being involved in a fatal crash with an impaired driver is about 50 times as great during 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock a.m. as it is from 7 o'clock a.m. noon. Other costs that cannot be measured include strained relationships, money losses, in addition to injury and death caused by riding with an impaired driver. Law enforcement officers write citations for speeding and for seatbelt violations. They also try to remove impaired drivers off the road before they kill people. It's a proven fact that those things save lives. Even simple collisions can cost thousands of dollars in vehicle repair and increase insurance premiums. If you are impaired and responsible for a crash or get caught driving under the influence of drugs, where will this kind of money come from? That's where it is. Impair means weaken or damage. Impair means weaken or damage. Impair means weaken or damage. And again, impair means weaken or damage. Impair means weaken or damage. Impair means weaken or damage. One last time. Impair means weaken or damage. Impair means damage something. Impair means to weaken or damage something. He was drunk, so he was too impaired to drive. The construction workers did impair construction work. Smoking can impair your health. All right. All right, here let me go over here. Impairment. The state or fact of being impaired, especially in a specified faculty, a degree of physical or mental impairment. The act of impairing something or the state or condition of being impaired, diminishment, or a loss of function or ability. It does not help reverse the impairment of cognitive activity caused by diazepam, a condition in which a part of your body or mind is damaged and does not work well. Impairment means it's the same as impair, the state of being weak or damaged. His impairment caused him to not be able to walk. Alcohol content or strength of a beverage varies greatly, and drinking a beverage of lower alcohol content is one deterrent to becoming impairment. A defense plan to prevent impairment is to control the amount consumed, extend the time of consumption, and select a drink with low alcohol content. The danger of sharing our roads with impaired drivers also includes drivers that are under the influence of other drugs. Mobility impaired persons. You must yield the right of way to mobility impaired persons when a pedestrian is crossing a public street or highway and the pedestrian is using a walker, a crutch, or an orthopedic cane or wheelchair. You must come to a complete stop. Mobility impaired persons. Impair means damaged or weakened or having a disability of a specific kind. I'm having a hearing impairment means you have an inability to hear properly. Seeing impaired, seeing impairment, phone impaired. Impaired means in most cases relates to one's condition of any kind. Seeing impaired means you can't see well, which is weakened or damaged. Driving impaired. Driving impairment means you can't drive well. Impairment is when a person's faculties are reduced so that his or her ability to see, hear, walk, talk, and judge distances is below the normal level as defined by the state. Any abnormality of partial or complete loss of or loss of the function of a body part, organ, or system. This may be due directly or secondarily to pathology or injury and may be either temporary or permanent. Impairment means something that works different. After considering all of these factors, not drinking is still the best solution to prevent impairment. And then, okay, impaired judgment. Difficulty in forming evaluative opinions or reaching conclusions concerning available evidence, often about people and courses of action. Impaired judgment may lead to seemingly irrational actions and risk-taking behaviors. It has been thought of as both a diagnostic and a predictive criterion for delirium, dementia, and substance-related disorders, but its diagnosis and measurement are hindered by the lack of an agreed operational definition. Various fields have contributed research on this issue, including developmental and industrial psychology, experimental psychology, perception medicine, and legal decision making. If either of the two physicians suspect the patient's request may be a result of impaired judgment, the patient must be referred for counseling. Small doses of alcohol He found not only impaired judgment and concentration, but produced lower physical responses to eyes, hands, and feet. Symptoms of hypothermia include impaired judgment and dexterity, which can quickly become deadly in an aquatic environment. As with many other drugs, users may also injure themselves due to loss of coordination or impaired judgment, especially if they attempt to drive. Impaired judgment is not specific to any diagnosis but may be a prominent feature of disorders affecting the frontal lobe of the brain. Some of the potential side effects included hyperactivity, impaired judgment, nervousness, and wild mood swings. Some of these warning signs may include memory loss, difficulty performing familiar tasks, poor or impaired judgment, and problems with language. This, together with impaired judgment, memory, and concentration caused by some drugs, can lead to hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia. Never heard of that before. Wow. Hypoglycemia. Impaired judgments of sadness but not happiness following bilateral amygdala. AMYGDALA damage. People with mania may also experience a decreased need for sleep, speak excessively in addition to speaking rapidly, and may have impaired judgment. This can cause headaches, gastrointestinal. Never heard of that. gastrointestinal disorders, coronary heart disease, impaired judgments, absenteeism, self-medication, and the consumption of drugs and alcohol. That's impaired judgment. And then next, impaired reflex. So impaired reflex means you're having difficulty moving or can't move a certain muscle in your body. Because of his impaired reflex, the champion was forced to postpone his forthcoming title defense. Impaired reflex means you're drunk and your reflexes are slow because you're drunk. I was drunk, so my reflexes were impaired. Impaired reflex means it is a spastic movement disorder. The child has an impaired reflex in his legs. Impaired reflex means it's a muscle that can't stretch because it's sore. The patient had a troubling impaired reflex with her bones. Impaired reflex means if your reaction times are not as good, John had impaired reflexes because he can consume alcohol. Impaired reflex means not reacting in a typical manner, and also it's a lack of reaction. Impaired reflex means it's intestinal gas control. He may have an impaired reflex. So another one over here, over the counter. By ordinary retail purchase with no need for a prescription or license, over-the-counter medicines of shared transactions taking place outside the stock exchange system. Key takeaways. Over-the-counter, OTC, refers to the process of how securities are traded for companies not listed on a formal exchange. Securities that are traded over-the-counter are traded via a dealer network, as opposed to on a centralized exchange. OTC. OTC stands for over the counter. Trading helps promote equity in financial instruments that would otherwise be unavailable to investors. Companies with OTC shares may raise capital through the sale of stock. It's medicine you can buy without a prescription. Prescribing drugs or taking drugs, no prescription. Ella took drugs over the counter. I went to CVS and bought over the counter medication without a prescription. Over the counter means getting things without document, without medications, without prescription. That's over the counter. Over the counter means non-prescription. Over the counter means anybody can buy it. I went to the pharmacy and bought medication over the counter. Over the counter means something you can get without prescription. Alright, folks. That's it. The lesson is over. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson.